Hello everyone. Again, I'm making a video without makeup so I look like a mess. But today, I'm going to be telling you my horror/thriller TBR while I lace up these lace thigh highs, because they came pre-laced a couple months ago, and every time I've attempted it, I'm way too angry and I can't finish it. So I'm going to tell you my horror TBR while I try and finish this. So I hope this is a fun video for you, because this has been incredibly frustrating for me. Okay, so first up on my horror TBR is The Shining by the one and only Stephen King. I've been meaning to read this book for a really long time, and I haven't got around to it. And I recently rediscovered my love of Stephen King by reading his short story collections. Did I do that right? Yes, I think I did. So I've been loving his short story collections lately, so I'm really looking forward to reading his books. This doesn't look right. So anyways, yeah, that's right. I'm looking forward to reading The Shining, and it's been at the top of my TBR for the longest time, and I just haven't been around to reading it yet. And I don't really know why. I think it's because The Shining is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's one of the movies I watch whenever I'm feeling down, so I'm worried that, like, I'll watch it, or I'll read it, and I won't like it. But anyways, if you don't know what The Shining is about, these descriptions are all from either Goodreads or Google. So The Shining centers around the Torrance family, husband Jack and wife Wendy, and their 5-year-old son Danny. And they move into the hotel because the dad is a caretaker, and they stay in the remote overlook hotel for the winter, and things go wrong. So if you haven't heard of The Shining, and I would be really surprised if you did, I would suggest watching the movie. The movie is amazing. And I would suggest reading the book, because I've heard the book is amazing and I need to read it so I know if it is. The second book on my horror TBR, I'm pretty sure, is a newly published book. I think it might have just been published in August, which is Within These Walls by Lauren Blackwood. I heard about this book on Goodreads, and it sounded really interesting. Sounds like my kind of book. So, Andromeda is a Deptera, an exorcist hired to cleanse households of the evil eye. When a handsome young heir named Magnus Rochester reaches out to hire her, Andromeda quickly realizes this job is like no other, with horrifying manifestations at every turn, and that Magnus is hiding far more from her than she has been trained for. Death is the most likely outcome if she stays. But leaving Magnus to live out his curse alone isn't an option. Evil may roam these halls, but so does his burning desire. So it sounds like a horror romance, which, knowing me, I would love, because that's like my two favorite genres. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. And if you have read it, let me know what it was like. Basically, what I've learned about lacing up things is that it sucks. So if any of you are corset people who lace corsets all the time, because, like, my corsets came pre-laced, so I didn't really have to worry about that, but this did not, and it has been a horrible experience trying to lace these. But anyways, the next book on my horror TBR is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is a book that I've heard talked about a lot, and I've heard very mixed things about it. Some good, some bad. Nothing really incredible, but I am still looking forward to reading it because it seems to have an interesting synopsis. On an island off the coast of Ireland, guests gathered to celebrate two people joining their lives together as one. The groom, handsome and charming, a rising television star. The bride, smart and ambitious, a magazine publisher. It's a wedding for a magazine. For a magazine or a celebrity. The designer dress, the remote location, the luxe party favors, the boutique wine. The cell phone service may be spotty and the waves may be rough, but every detail has been expertly planned and will be expertly executed. But perfection is for plans, and people are all too human. As the champagne popped and the festivities began, resentments and petty jealousy began to mingle with the reminiscence and well wishes. The groomsmen began the drinking game from their old school days. The bridesmaid accidentally ruins her dress. The bride's oldest male friend gives an uncomfortably caring toast, and then someone turns up dead. Who didn't wish the happy couple well, and perhaps more important, why? Next up on the list is this. The Whisper Man. I didn't write down who wrote this. It's on Goodreads. Look up The Whisper Man. I've heard good things about it from a few different booktubers that I watch, and then bad things about it from a few different booktubers that I watch. But anyways, the synopsis is, Featherbank has a dark past. 20 years ago, a serial killer abducted and murdered 5 residents until Frank Carter was finally caught. He was nicknamed the Whisper Man, for he would lure his victims by whispering their names out their windows at night. Just as Tom and Jake settle into their new home, a young boy vanishes. His disappearance bears an unnerving resemblance to Frank Carter's crimes, reigniting old rumors that he preyed with an accomplice. Now detectives Amanda, Beck, and Pete Willis must find the boy before it's too late, even if that means Pete has to revisit his great foe in prison, the Whisper Man. And then Jake begins acting strangely. He's hearing a whispering at his window. So that actually sounds really cool. It sounds more crime driven, and I'm into that. I love crime novels, so I am excited to see where that goes. I hope I enjoy it. I've heard very, very mixed things. I know one YouTuber I watch loves this book, and the other YouTuber I watch hates this book. So very conflicting opinions, but I'm happy to throw my opinion in the mix soon. So we're about that far up now, and I don't even know if I'm doing this right, so I could do this entire thing completely wrong and then try them on and they'll fall apart. So if that happens, I might just cry. The next book on my horror TBR is The Troop by Nick Cutter. Boy, have I heard things about this book, saying that it is the most gory, most violent book they've ever read, people have ever read, that it greatly disturbed people. So yeah, I've heard a lot of things about this book, especially from YouTubers that I love, saying that they both loved it and hated it. Some of them couldn't finish it. Just a lot of different feelings towards how the gore was handled in this story, which really interests me, because anytime I hear you're not going to be able to handle this, I immediately want to read it, even if it's something that I know will trigger me. And I've heard there's animal violence in this book, which is a huge trigger for me, but at the same time, I'm probably gonna end up reading it. So anyways, the synopsis of the book, if I can get this stupid lace through this stupid hole. The synopsis of this book is, once a year, Scoutmaster Tim Riggs leads a troop of boys into the Canadian wilderness. Oh, I'm Canadian. For a 3-day camping trip. A tradition as comforting and reliable as a good ghost story and a roaring bonfire. But when an unexpected intruder, shockingly thin and disturbingly pale, with a voraciously hungry, stumbles upon their campsite, Tim and the boys are exposed to something far more frightening than any tale of terror. The human carrier of a bioengineered nightmare, an inexplicable horror that spreads faster than fear, a harrowing struggle for survival that will pit the troop against the elements, the infected, and one another. So that sounds really interesting, especially because I really like infection stories. I've heard some of the scenes are really, really gross, but I want to know now. Next up is another Stephen King book, which is The Bizarre Bad Dreams. This is a short story collection, so I didn't really add a synopsis for it because I don't think it has a specific theme. It might have a theme of sleep. I'll have to check again because I think I might be thinking of a different book. But right now, I love anthologies and short story collections because I am so stressed out about moving in 18 days that I can't focus on a book or a story long enough to actually read a full book. So short story collections, I can just read the stories that I want to read and then move on from the book happy with what I got. And that's a lot easier for me than reading a whole story. So I've been reading a lot of either short stories or short story collections, just so I can keep reading, but at the same time I'm not stressing myself out about different things. It's very hard to read when you're in a very stressed state of mind. And if you can't read, please remember that's totally fine. You don't need to reach the insane goals that people reach on Goodreads or hold yourself to a high standard of reading like 200 books a year. I haven't read in 2 months. That's why there was no wrap-up video for July, and there probably won't be one for August, even though I have started reading again. So if I read more than 2 books, because right now I'm halfway through a book that I started yesterday because it was really good. If that gets me out of my reading slump, I might have a wrap up for the end of the month, but I'm also moving at the very end of the month, so I don't know if I will have one just because of how busy I'm going to be. So I hope that's okay. I also hope it's okay that I'm going to start talking about horror movies on this channel as well, because horror is my favorite genre in both books and in movies. So I want to start sharing my views on horror movies and my thoughts, because I think I have some interesting ones. I have a video that I'm making about the comparison of the Mist movie to the Mist short story by Stephen King, because I read that while I was camping in July, and I really liked it, and I have some thoughts about the themes, and I wanted to discuss them with you. Next up on my list is Horde by Katrina Leno. This was a book that was actually recommended to me like months ago. I had posted that I was getting back into the horror genre and the thriller genre, and to leave some book recommendations, and this was one of the ones that was recommended to me, along with Pretty Girls and I think Shout, Ring X, something like that. There were quite a few that were recommended to me that actually look really good. Some of them, I think a few of them are on this list, but some of them are just a bit too much for me right now, considering like some of the heavy themes. Some of them are very political, which I think is really important, but at the same time I am not in the right headspace to be reading them, and I wouldn't be getting a full understanding of what's happening in this headspace, so I want to wait until I can fully focus in on these kinds of stories when like I'm in a better mindset for it. So, Horde is about, as the cold New England autumn arrives and Jane settles into her new home, she finds solace in old books and memories of her dad. She steadily begins making new friends, but also faces bullying from the resident bad seed, struggling to tamp down her own worst nature in response. Jane's mom also seems to be spiraling with the return of her childhood home, but she won't reveal why. Then Jane discovers that the storage room her mom has kept locked isn't for storage at all. It's a little girl's bedroom, left untouched for years and not quite empty of inhabitants as it appears. Is it grief, mental illness, or something more horrid? I think that sounds really cool. I love books about mental illness. If you know anything about me, if you follow my TikTok, if you know anything about this channel, I struggle with mental illness very badly. Look at me. Yeah, it's kind of obvious. But yeah, I really like horror's portrayal, when it's properly done, of mental illness and how horror can show the actual pain people go through when it comes to mental illness, when it's actually done in the favor of someone with mental illness instead of done as mental illness is the problem kind of situation. I hate that more than anything, when mental illness is the cause of the haunting or the cause of the thing. For example, I'm trying to think of some movies that did it wrong, but like just exploitative films about mental illness really bother me. But I remember, what was that one that I was thinking of? I don't remember. The Babadook. The Babadook explored really heavy themes of mental illness in a really extravagant and very like healthy and non-exploitative way. I think that is a very good movie about mental illness, and it's definitely not for everyone. I know my fiance does not like that movie at all because he has issues watching movies about mental illnesses, which is completely fine. I love things that have to do with mental illness just because I find I can relate to them more, and I love psychology, so I love analyzing things. So I'm really excited to read this one. It might actually be in my next 3 books that I'm planning on reading. I have to finish Neon Gods, which I think I'll be finished in a couple days. It's just a short romance book, and I really love it, so I'm speeding through it really fast. But yeah. Ah, we're making progress. We're almost at the top. The next book on my TBR is a Japanese folktale styled story called Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Kah. I've been excited about this book since I heard about it. I was thrilled to be reading anything about Japanese folklore because I find it really interesting, even though I don't know much about it. But I am so excited to read this. I put off reading it just because horror in books bothers me a lot more than horror in movies, because I think you can get away with a lot more with horror in books, even though it's a lot harder to describe what's happening. I find that because you're not limited to CGI or practical effects, you can get away with a lot more, like, terrifying ideals. So I haven't been reading many actual horror books just because they affect me a lot more than horror movies. So I am so excited to read this book, but I've been putting it off. So I'm planning on starting it soon, hopefully in the next month or so. I'm hoping to read a lot of horror books in October and watch a lot of horror in October, and I'll do a lot of horror themed stuff in October as well. And, you know, be a good YouTuber, TikToker that way. Anyways, a Heian-era mansion stands abandoned, its foundations resting on the bones of a bride, and its walls packed with the remains of the girl sacrificed to keep her company. That's a way to start. It's the perfect wedding venue for a group of thrill-seeking friends, but a good night of food, drinks, and games quickly spirals into a nightmare, for lurking in the shadows is the ghost bride with a black smile and a hungry heart, and she gets lonely down there in the dirt. So this sounds like a straight-up ghost story. It has Japanese folklore. It's just something really interesting, which is also kind of like, it's not related, but it kind of reminds me of how The Maidens is a college murder story, but also has not Japanese, Greek themes. That's another book I'm reading to read. I didn't put it on this list because it is apparently long, and I can't do that right now. So I will hopefully get to that eventually, but it might be on one of my other horror TBRs eventually. So stay tuned to find out. And the next book on my list is The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. I hope I wrote that down correctly. I don't remember what the author's name was, but I think I guessed a bit. I think it's Jay Anson. So Amityville Horror, like The Shining, is another one of my favorite horror movies, and it's one of the few horror movies to ever actually disturb me, along with a few others, who managed to get the wonderful title of fucked Fen up for a few days. I don't know why. It's the same with Us. I watched Us and was messed up for a couple weeks, and I don't even know what about it bothered me. But yeah, so Amityville Horror is one of those books that actually got to me, which is surprising, and I'm not disappointed about it. I love when a movie can actually get to me. So, or one of those movies that actually got to me. I screwed something up here. I don't know what I did. Anyways, so if you don't know what Amityville Horror is about, in December 1975, the Lutz family moved into their dream home, the same home where Ronald DeFeo had murdered his parents, brothers, sisters just 1 year earlier. The psychic phenomenon that followed created the most terrifying experience Lutz family has ever encountered, forcing them to flee the house in 28 days, convinced that it was possessed by evil spirits. I love the movie so much, so I am really excited to see if the book lives up to my love of the movie. I'm assuming it will, because I tend to always like books more than movies. But I think the OG Amityville Horror is definitely a really, really good movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly suggest it. I have not seen any of the many remakes, although I'm planning to watch the one with Ryan Reynolds just because Ryan Reynolds is one of my favorite actors, and I don't care if it's bad if it has him in it. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll let you know how I feel about that movie. So yeah, hopefully I get around to this soon. So the next book on my TBR I thought was a comedy, actually, and that is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. I don't know why I thought it was a comedy, but when I read the title, it just sounded comedic to me. But I'm really excited to read this one. As soon as I saw it, I was like, that sounds like a book I would love. So especially considering that I want to do a video on my opinion of horror perpetrating purity culture and Final Girl, like the way it's, a lot of the early horror movies were very anti-feminism, and like I want to talk about that kind of stuff and just kind of my issues with the horror genre in general, and especially to do with women. So I am excited to read this book because I think it'll be a more feministic taste to the horror genre, and I am not having a good time with this. Okay, so Lynette Tarkington is a real-life final girl who survived a massacre 22 years ago, and it has defined every day of her life since. She's not alone. For more than a decade, she's been meeting with 5 other actual final girls and their therapist in a support group for those who survive the unthinkable, putting their lives back together piece by piece. That is until one woman misses a meeting and Lynette's worst fears are realized. Someone knows about the group and is determined to take their lives apart again, piece by piece. But the thing about these final girls is that they have each other now, and no matter how bad the odds, how dark the night, how sharp the knife, they will never give up. And I really love the sounds of that, because I love romance books, but when it comes to romance and friendship books go above romance for me, because I love a good story with friendship, and especially like a well-written friendship, because I find a lot of them are very poorly written. So I'm excited to see if this book lives up to my expectations of it. So I'll let you know. The next book on my TBR is The Ruins by Scott Smith. I have watched the movie already for this, and I liked it. I watched it a couple of years ago. I am not a fan of body horror movies, but this is one of my fiance's favorite movies of all time. So when we first started dating, actually this was one of the first movies, along with Saw, that he showed me, which at the time I wasn't watching horror movies at all. So he's kind of the reason I love horror movies and horror in general now. So thank you to him for that, because it is one of the favorite parts of my life. So he showed me The Ruins when we first got together, and I was greatly disturbed because of the amount of body horror that was in that movie. But I am excited to read the book because I heard it's even more devastating, which is like my indication of I'm gonna like this, but also cry. So, trapped in a Mexican jungle, I can't speak, a group of friends stumble upon a creeping horror unlike anything they could have ever imagined. 2 young couples are on a lazy Mexican vacation, sun-drenched days, drunken nights, making friends with fellow tourists. When the brother of those friends disappears, they decide to venture into the jungle to look for him. What started out as a fun day trip slowly spirals into a nightmare when they find an ancient ruin site and the terrifying presence that lurks there. The movie was really good, and I've heard that the book is really good too, so I'm very excited to read it. We are now down to the last 2 books on my TBR at the moment, and the next one is another short story collection, but this one is by Neil Gaiman, and it'll be the first Neil Gaiman book that I've ever read, which I'm really excited about, and that is Trigger Warning by Neil Gaiman. It is a collection of short stories pertaining to the horror genre, from what I understand. Trigger Warning explores the masks we all wear and the people we are beneath them, to reveal our vulnerabilities and our truest selves. Here, a rich cornucopia of horror and ghost stories, science fiction, fairy tales, fabulism, and poetry that explore the realm of experience and emotion. An adventure story, a thematic companion to the ocean at the end of the lane. I don't know what that is. Gaiman ponders death and the way people take their stories with them when they die. A social media experience, a calendar's tale, are short takes inspired by replies to fan tweets about a month of the year. Stories of pirates in the March winds, an igloo made of books, and Mother's Day cards that pretends disturbances in the universe. Gaiman offers his ingenious spin on Sherlock Holmes and his award-winning mystery tale, The Case of Death and Honey, and Click Clack, the Rattle Bag explains the creaks and clatters we hear when we're alone in the darkness. So it sounds like an interesting collection, and as I said, I'm really into short story collections at the moment. So I am really curious to read this one, and I think it could get me started in Neil Gaiman's books, because I have been interested in reading American Gods for a while, but I just haven't got around to it. So I'm hoping that I enjoy it. And this final book is a book I heard about on Goodreads today, and considering some of the reviews, I'm a little concerned to read it, but also I loved the cover. The cover was gorgeous, and I am very curious to see what it's about, because the synopsis doesn't give away what the reviews gave away. And not that they were spoilers, but what the actual story is about is incredibly strange compared to what I thought it was based on the synopsis. But this book is Things Got Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. I am very confused about it so far. I guess I should have guessed what it was about based on the description, but I didn't think it was what people were saying it was. So, a whirlpool pool of darkness churns at the heart of a macabre ballet between two lonely women in an internet chat room in the early 2000s. A darkness that threatens to forever transform them as they finally succumb to their most horrific desires. What have you done today to deserve your eyes? And that last line was what sold me on it, and the eye art on the cover, like the kind of eye art. I use facial horror in my vent art a lot as a way to kind of portray how I'm feeling, but I am really curious to see how this book goes considering what I've heard, but I'm also ready to fully stop it considering what I've heard. So if you think about reading this book, I suggest reading the reviews first to see if it is the type of book for you. But anyways, this is the end of the video. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed me talking about my TBR for God knows how long. These clips are a lot longer than I usually make them, I noticed. So obviously I had a lot to talk about because I was very distracted by doing this, which I'm at the very end of now, and I have a whole other legging to do. So it took me this long to get this far on this legging, and I have to do a whole other one next, and I'm so excited. So thank you for watching this video. I'm gonna finish this legging and then show you what it looks like, because hopefully it won't look horrible. So they didn't turn out as I expected, because the actual photos show them being like a lot more open, but these are not open at all, and I loop them every second hole, so I don't know if I have to loop them every third or something like that, but they are not like wide at all, which I guess is fine, but a little disappointed there. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys have a lovely day. If you want to see more of my content, which will now be both horror movie and book content, please subscribe and come back every couple days or a week, because I tend to only upload once a week, to see if there's any new videos. Again, thank you so much. Bye.